few volcanoes going on, but the sun is very happy because it can now see the Earth. So that's an example of the impressionistic charts.
So you can see these are going to capture their imaginations. These are not thinking scientifically accurate, but the idea is to capture their imagination, to get them thinking, how could this be? How does this happen? And send them off into the research. And then they come back with the right answers.
The next one is called the black strip. And I'm not going to unroll it all the way, but it's the length of the whole hallway and then some. Once you get to the very end, there's a little strip about a ½ inch wide, and you're telling a story the whole time that you're unrolling it about how we cover the creation of the earth story and the coming of life, and then at the very end is the little red stripe represents the time that humans have been on earth. And this gives a very strong impression, because this thing is so long, of how long it took the earth to get ready for us, and how long we've been on earth, which is really very small in comparison to this long black strip.
It gives a very concrete impression of how small a part we played in the whole of creation. We've only just been there such a small part.
And look what,
And look what mankind has done.
And the last one I'm going to show you is the timeline of life, which of course has a story that goes with it. Do you want to hold
Oh
it?
yeah, absolutely. That's it. Yeah, this is the right side.
And this shows the
Maybe
beginning.
we should walk out in front.
Okay. This shows the beginning of life with a little blob of jelly.
Way down here.
And comes all the way to this little red strip here where the humans came into being. So again, it gives the impression of all that came before us, all the life that came before us.
And it's really fascinating because you can see here, this is the beginning of the trilobites, okay? They're the first things that really had enough of an exoskeleton that you could see fossilized records. And they start out really little, right? And they can see their timeline, it goes way up and they get just huge and intensely specialized. And they become so specialized that they just kind of specialize themselves right out of existence.
There's also an ice age around there, so you
Yeah.
want to keep that in mind.
So there's, I mean, there are many stories within the stories that as we discover which animals become very flexible and able to adapt,
Some of them can make it
and
to
they
the end.
continue all the way on.
And at the bottom are the continents and how they've shifted over time until they come pretty close to present day.
Right, we go from Pangea all the way through, and so you, as the children work with this timeline, all of the things that they learned in the 3 to 6 classroom about vertebrates and invertebrates, about plants and animals, about the different kingdoms, they can see where those things fit, how they all go together and become part of this huge picture, this long story, which is our modern myth of how everything came to be. I mean, it's our very best guess of it right now. But we all need stories that help us understand who we are, why we're here, what's going on in this world and in this life.
How we got here.
How we got here. And this begins to help them put all that in perspective and remember, the child developmentally at this age wants to know. They want to know. And this gives them a very ordered, but again, flowing way to make sense out of what is going on. And they can go into the part of it that is most interesting to them, but yet see it within the whole.
And it's not uncommon to have children want to create their own
Oh.
entire timelines. And sometimes they add new creatures. And sometimes they just kind of copy what's already on the timeline.
But it's a work through which they get a wonderful perspective on botany, zoology, evolution, history, because this is just one of the many timelines. This is, I mean, you know, the long one, that's the timeline of the Earth. Now, this is the timeline of life.
And
Then,
the timelines of humans.
and the timeline of civilizations.
Yeah.
And by the time you get through all of that, you've made it through your sixth year.
Well, but then we've got more stories about
Oh,
civilization.
oh yeah.
Various.
But the technique, again, is, I'm gonna put this down, thank you for calling. The technique is to take something that is large and impressive, and lays an impression on them that gets them going, that sparks their curiosity, that sparks their imagination, and gets them started. And when we tell the stories about the different things, there are so many things that we don't know. And these are the openings for them. As we say, well, you know, this is what our best scientists think right now, but we're not really sure. But maybe when you grow up, you'll be the person that figures that out. So they're always being stimulated to think, what might I do? What could I do? What's going to be my thing, my contribution? And how do I learn to get there? We did it. So we wanted to give you this introduction to cosmic education. So you'd have some kind of idea of sort of the unifying theme of the 6 to 12-year-old. And then in the future, we have 3 more times, and we will delve into different aspects of that depending on where your interests are and where the guides in the other classrooms feel it's important to have a focus. So we're done with what's prepared, and we have time for...
Yeah, so we can forget. There's always something when you walk in a classroom you can imagine. It's just brilliant to see what they're doing every single minute, and it's always different. You know, you can sometimes in other traditional classrooms you can almost tell by 10 o'clock you know what's happening. That's not always ever true here. That makes that very fun. They have been generous enough to stick around for some questions you may have or something like that. And so why don't we certainly want to open that up. If you have to leave, I know some of you said you had to leave at 7, so feel free to do that. Thank you for coming. But otherwise, we'll go ahead and open it up to some questions that these folks might have.
Right. And we also have, over here, we have some handouts. One handout just is an explanation of, it's actually out of this book, which is called The Montessori Way by Tim Selden and Paul Epstein. And it's the section on the 6 to 12-year-old. And so if you want to read a little bit more about what's going on, that's available to you. The other thing I wanted to just do, I just brought some books that if you are curious. This is a wonderful book. It's called Children of the Universe, Cosmic Education in the Montessori Classroom. It's by Michael and Danielle Duffy. And it takes you through the story of the universe, the story of the stars in the solar system, the earth, life, humans, and civilization. And it's easy reading. It's not written by an Italian woman, translated into English. Children of the Universe. And, I mean, it's easy reading.